Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be reviewing the final confirmed DLC for Fire Emblem Three Houses, which is known as the Cindered Shadows pack. Although more accurately, that's the name of the side story that comes with the pack, not the whole experience. So to make things a little bit easier on both myself and you guys, I'm going to divide this review into multiple sections. The first section is going to be talking about the pros and cons of the side story itself, which is where the name Cindered Shadows comes from. The second part is going to be talking about the improvements to the main game that come as a result of the side content, because you can carry over certain aspects and progress into the main game. So for starters, let's talk about the new story. Now, one concern that I had that I want to make sure that you guys don't have to worry about is, how is this going to affect your pre-existing save files if you've already played Three Houses? The answer is, it's not going to affect them pretty much at all. If anything, it's going to add new conveniences, which I'll get to in the next part, but it doesn't actually take up any of the data in your main save file. In fact, you access Cindered Shadows from the menu by clicking the side story option, and then you get 4 save files, 1 autosave file, and 3 regular saves that you can use in addition to the 25 that you already have for the main game. So you do not need to worry if you have 25 save files and you're like, what am I going to do for a 26th? Do not panic, guys. You are in good hands. This is 7 chapters long, and to avoid spoiling too much, let me just say that this is essentially sort of an alternate what-if scenario in the Fire Emblem universe. Like, maybe if things played out a little bit differently in the monastery, let's see how this would affect the narrative. Because you've got all 3 house leaders working together throughout the entirety of the campaign, which only happens in a grand total of 1 map in the main story. So it's very nice to see Dimitri, Claude, and Edelgard all on the same team for a change. So, most of the story takes place underground in a place known as Abyss. It also features students from a 4th house known as the Ashen Wolves. Now, don't get too concerned about, oh, does that mean the game has to change its title? Because the game places more emphasis on the overarching struggle of the characters as opposed to their house itself. So, don't feel like you're like, oh no, I have to choose between a 4th house. In fact, if you're concerned about 3 houses giving you too much freedom and choice, then Cindered Shadows is going to be a huge refresher to you, because they actually eliminate a lot of the heavy customization that made 3 houses such a fine departure from the Fire Emblem norm. You have 11 characters initially. You have Byleth, of course, the main professor. Then you have Hilda, Ash, and Linhardt as your student representatives, 1 from each of the main 3 houses. Then you have all 3 house leaders, Claude, Dimitri, and Edelgard, and then the 4 new characters, Balthus, Happy, Constance, and Yuri. All of them have really unique mannerisms and characters that don't feel copy and pasted from the other cast. They're also all impeccably voiced, even if the voice lines sometimes feel like they blend in with the music. So I don't know, maybe there are some technical difficulties in the recording booth. Suffice to say, the voice recording is good, I just wish it was a little bit louder. But maybe that's just because I'm going deaf or something like that, I don't know. You be the judge of that. Generally speaking, the challenges of this campaign expect you to have mastered the basics of 3 houses. All of your units start out at level 20 to sort of put you in perspective, whereas you all sort of start out at level 1 in the main campaign. And these are some of the hardest, most brutal challenges you will ever find. You are expected to take your initial group of units with the only new reinforcements you get the entire new campaign being the 4 students of the Ashen Wolves. While you can level up, you can't upgrade your classes, you can't take exams for certain classes, you can't get support conversations, although you do get support benefits, but they are predetermined by the game, not by your own choices. So you don't have to feel like you have to keep units too bundled up together to get support conversations. They want to save that for the main game. You have very limited resources, you can't grind at all, you have to get from point A to point B. And if this sounds too radical for you, It's because this is what Fire Emblem games used to be. More specifically, I would say this is closer in line to the structure of the original Fire Emblem on Game Boy Advance, as well as the Shadow Dragon remake on the DS. So fans yearning for a more classic experience are going to be right at home, provided they've already played Three Houses and know how the mechanics work. Although if you're dead set determined to play this mode first, the game's not going to stop you. In fact, it even encourages you to look at the guide and review the tutorials for mechanics that maybe you don't know, because this game does not stop and explain things to you. It expects that you already know what Divine Pulse means, you already know what the weapon durability means. It's saying you're already supposed to be good, and if you're not, what is wrong with you? I would say the story is suited more for people that want to replay Three Houses, as opposed to, say, someone hearing about Three Houses and saying, oh, a different starting point. So, now that we've gotten the Cindered Shadows portion out of the way, mostly, the only real thing I want to talk about without doing too much spoilers is just that the story is pretty short. It's a decent story, but it also feels incredibly rushed because it's only 7 chapters long. So pretty much by the time you're figuring out what everything means and what the twist is, it's already over. The plus side is that it comes with 5 new music tracks, and all of them are pretty good, especially the new final battle theme that comes at the very end of the campaign. You also get a handful of new maps. None of them are particularly exciting, but the joy comes in the challenge of how the enemies are placed, the objectives that you have to fulfill, as opposed to trying to think of a crazy complex array of arenas. Now that that's over with, let's talk about what changes it makes to the main game. And in my opinion, this was probably even better than the side story itself. So as you progress through certain bits of Cindered Shadows, various unlockables will make their way into the main game, be it either in an existing save file, or if you decide to start a whole new game from scratch, or if you do a new game plus file. So for instance, if you only complete part of Cindered Shadows, then you'll only get some of the benefits in your next game. So for beating the Cindered Shadows pack, you actually get more renown and a new item that is under Byleth's bed, which is, of course, in addition to the sacred items that you got as a bonus for purchasing DLC Wave 2. So essentially you get even more stuff that you can get. You also have access to the new Ashen Wolves students that you can recruit when you're at the monastery, and you get new side quests and a new area to explore, which is known as Abyss. Essentially, you could think of this as a mini Garrigmach Monastery. While it's nowhere near as big and complex, it looks graphically way prettier. I guess the developers must have had a little bit of an extra budget, so they put more work into stuff like individual brickwork and making the place feel like it's actually an authentic, crumbling old mine shaft. In the side story, you don't really get to do much in Abyss besides just restocking on supplies and getting information from people. But in the main game, you can freely travel between Abyss and the monastery, take part in their own side quests, talk to the new set of characters. And the new side quests are outlined in blue, just like the DLC Wave 2 ones were. So it's pretty easy to distinguish which ones are additions to the main game and which ones are put in there from day one. So you shouldn't have any confusions about that. You also get a new character known as the Influencer, who doesn't join your party, but if you talk to him during the main story, sorry if my language is sounding repetitive here, that's literally what they call it, he gives you the option to influence Abyss and give you even more benefits to your main game. When I was initially playing this, I thought it was best if you go in blind, but considering the fact that you have to spend renown points, which could be further spent on the saint statues to increase your benefits, I feel like you should get an informed decision so that you might, say, save your renown for something else. You have the ability to make a scrap heap appear, which every time you visit the Abyss, you get a chance to get new and broken items that you can forge into better stuff. So essentially an ever-growing stash of weapons in case no one in your party is a magic user. You can upgrade the inn so that there's better conversations. There's the ability to spend renown to increase support levels. You can freely ship couples by spending renown instead of just waiting for the game to randomly say who's going to end up married. You can have more books in the Abyss library that were banned from the main library. And you can also essentially make certain aspects of replaying Three Houses easier once you get the roster retrieval. So you have the option of making one mistake during tea time by using your intuition, and when you're trying to give a student a lost item, you'll have an icon that appears on the upper right that denotes which house they were originally from. So for example, if you see a blue flag, then you'll know that you have to talk to one of the students of the Blue Lion's house. Essentially, it makes replaying Three Houses way easier than I would have expected. And in all honesty, I feel like that's the way Three Houses should have been from the start, but me being spoiled, I guess I didn't know that this is stuff that I wanted. And that's the mark of good DLC, is you realize how the heck could you possibly live without wanting this? And then when you do live with it, you wonder how you ever survived without it. Now, let's do a little recap on the stuff that you've already gotten, because the Three Houses DLC isn't done as individual purchases. For DLC Wave 2, you get a couple of new grinding maps that are denoted by yellow exclamation points when you choose battle on your day off, which give you more gold, more stat boosting items, more experience, and is essentially a way to make your units more overpowered than they would on their own. You also get new items under Byleth's bed, some new costumes. With the update, you can now choose to dress your units in the costumes in pretty much any scenario. So if you want to run into battle wearing loungewear, you can do that. A couple of new costumes that were added with this DLC were the ability to dress up Byleth in a dancer class because he or she can't actually take the dancer certification. I personally think it looks really stupid on the male and somewhat suggestive on the female, but that's up to you because individual tastes vary. You also get the ability to go into the sauna, which is extremely hard to master, but if you can get a grip on it, then that'll increase the effectiveness of the lessons or facility activities of both you and the student that you take into the sauna. Plus it gives you the opportunity to see them in like those Japanese style sweating robes, for lack of a better word. Then there's a couple of new side quests that are added, such as the ability to have a tea party with Rhea, be able to put Byleth in a tournament. So essentially there's a lot of new quests and paralogs that come with the expansion. You also get an opportunity to feed the dogs and cats of the monastery rather than just walking through them like you did in the original version. This doesn't add a whole lot, it really just gives you materials for foraging and repairing weapons. But it's still a nice touch for the animal lovers out there. I bet Woodhawker is probably really pleased right now because that was one of his complaints. So is the DLC worth it now that the first expansion pass is over, assuming Nintendo doesn't make a shocker announcement like they did with Smash for Wii U and 3DS? I would say yes, if you plan on replaying Three Houses to death. If you do not plan on replaying, then I would say it really depends on how much you like Three Houses as a whole. Are you willing to really get invested in monastery activities? Are you going to try to get most of the supports? Are you really into maximizing the units' potential? If the answer is yes to most of those, then this DLC is an easy recommendation. While the side story is rather short, and it probably could have been expanded on, I would also say that it introduces some very interesting characters. One thing I will warn you guys about is if you're the overly sensitive type, you might want to be careful around the character of Constance, who has a very day and night type of personality swap, and people might see that as making fun of the bipolar syndrome. But if you can look past that, you find some really interesting quirks, and you'll probably be just as invested into upgrading these units and getting their supports as you would anyone else in the Three Houses narrative. Just don't expect there to be a change in title, and don't expect the side story to have the same bells and whistles and enticing plot twists of the original game. You're still going to find that much more of a treat. But I would say that if you're hesitant about replaying Three Houses, saying, oh goodness, doing one path took long enough, why should I do multiple? Then the DLC is going to help really increase the replay value to a game that's already highly replayable. So, in light of this being a 2020 release, how would I rate it on a scale of 0 to 20? Being a diehard Fire Emblem fan, I'm probably going to be a little bit biased here, but I think I'm going to have to say a 17 out of 20. It's docked points because I wish the side story was a little bit longer. I wish they had expanded upon the fourth classroom. The plot twists came a little bit too quick for my liking, even though they were fine, albeit a little bit predictable. And I kind of wish that there were more maps to choose from. A lot of them are recycled or just not terrible, but not great either. With that, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, or critiques, please leave them in the comment section. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and I hope you guys will choose the Blue Lions first. I do love the color blue, and I feel like that's the most underrated house. Bye!